G'day everyone, hello again, welcome to another riveting adventure of VYVZ Garage. This is part 6 I think of the rear bush and bearing install, which has been a bit of a disaster, which is, I know I say that all the time, it's nothing new for me, but I'll show you, I'll explain a bit more when we get over to the car. So today I'm fitting the handbrake assembly in the rear axles. I've done one side, so only because, well, it'll become more evident when I tell you what stupid bloody thing I did. Well, so we'll go over to the car and I'll explain what happened. Okay, here we are. This side I've just adjusted the handbrake. Discs on, axles in. You can see over the back. I want to get the handbrake working so I can tighten these nuts on the back. I've tightened them up with a rattle gun, but I really want to try and lock it up and tighten them right up before I put the locking thing on the back. The axles will be the last thing in. I still got no brake lines or anything on yet, and I'll show you. I'll tell you what I did first, and you're going to get a laugh out of this because I'm such a dickhead. After the last video, I was that excited to get the swing arms and the springs and that in, and I'd had both of the axles in the freezer, trying to shrink them a bit, make them a bit easier to go in. So old Dumbo here rushes down to the freezer and grabs an axle. Run up to this side, and I thought, I'm going to try this, and I've taken a nut off the back and I slid it in, and it went 3/4 of the way in, just pushing in. And then I decided to whack it in, and I thought, oh, this is unreal. Then I stood back and had a look, and I went, oh, you dick. I'd forgotten the handbrake, the whole handbrake, backing plate, everything. So guess who had to bash the axle back out? Luckily, for as far as I could see, I didn't damage the bearing, so I pushed the bearing back out because I thought I did, but when I had a look at it on the bench, it was fine. I just damaged the dust seal, the outer dust seal, so I'm going to have to live without that. But so the bearing's back in. This thing's like, you know, she's ready to go once I get the brake lines and that on. So let's go around the other side and I'll show you. Okay, what can you see here? Well, of course I've left the light over the other side, but this is where I'm up to, so I'm sorry, but I've been working on this Savo, and I just wanted to get this done, and then I thought, no, I better stop. So what's happening here is I've just bolted on the backing plate. Now that's pretty easy. It's these two bolts at the top there, and then you've got the two for the adjuster in there. I don't know if you can see, but you've got your two for your adjuster. All pretty straightforward. I backed the adjuster right off, so I can get the disc on and everything and adjust the handbrake later on. So that's really all I've done. And if you watch my previous video, I'll put a link to it in the description. I haven't worked out, if anyone knows, please tell me how. I haven't worked out how to do those clickable links on the top right hand corner of the video that other blokes do. But yeah, if you know how to do it, please explain it to me, because I sort of tried to do a little bit of research and I just can't work it out. So anyway, so this is where I'm at. So there's a new bearing, right, and that's all good. On the other side, because I bashed it out, this outer bearing just came out. So I re-greased it all and put it back in. It seems to be fine, but we'll see. You know, you'll hear me whinging in the next video that I stuffed it up. But anyway, the car's at the stage now where I just want to get it back on the road. This has been off the road. This has been going for weeks. Yeah, you can see them. Look at them bushes, eh? They're probably going to be no good, you know. But I'm not a fan of Nolithane stuff. I'd rather put the rubber in, but I went for them because they're actually cheaper than the rubber. Another thing I want to explain is this is a long drawn out process for me, and it might seem like, oh crap, this is a lot of work, but I've broken it all up because you may not be like me and be an idiot and decide to rebuild the whole back end of the ute. So you might be just doing your bearings, or you might just be doing your bushes. So hopefully one part of this whole series will help you, or the whole lot, who knows. So righto, this is where I'm up to. I've got the axle in the freezer and I'm going to freeze it overnight and try and put it in here. So we're just going to have to wait, and I'll come back when it's ready. Alright, so this is the axle, or really should be called a spindle. I reckon it's more like a spindle, but whatever you want to call it. It's been in the freezer for a bit over 24 hours, so I'm going to see how I go. When I was in a hurry to put that other one in by mistake, it sort of slid 3/4 of the way in, so but no such luck. So I've got a drift. All right. Alright, that's just about in. Okay, I'm on the inside now. I've just tapped this on with a brass drift and a hammer. Just part of the way on, enough to get the nut on. So now I'm just going to try and tighten it a bit to make sure it's not cross-threaded. And then I'll use the rattle gun. Hang on. There. Alright. So now it's rattle gun time. And hopefully she's alright. Okay, that's in the right spot, because it's, you just see the thread just sticking through the nut. That's usually right. That all feels good. I'm going to tighten that up a bit more later when I can lock the wheel up, which is what I did on the other side. The other side's already done. So the next step, I'm going to leave that. The next step is putting the disc on and adjusting the handbrake now, because I'll show you on the outside. We'll go back on the outside and we'll get all set up. Okay, here we are back on the outside. You can see I've already set up the handbrake. Like I said earlier on in the video, it's just the 4 bolts. Put your adjuster in, then slip your shoes on. I'll put a link to the handbrake rebuild video, so that's why I didn't film any of that. That's nice and cold. Bearing feels good, better than the other side. Like I said earlier, I messed up on the other side, so I don't know if that bearing's going to be, I may have to in some time in the future change it again. But for now, this car has to be back on the road. So worst part about working in a confined area, I don't need the brass drift anymore. It's all the tools. You just keep tripping over everything. So I'll also put a link to the handbrake adjustment video, because it's pretty much the same thing. I've backed it right off, so all I've got to do now is adjust this. So I'll come back in a minute because I've got to get my little crayon, because I usually mark it at 12 o'clock when the hole is lined up with the adjuster, so I can just spin it around and get it exactly at the right spot. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, just a flat screwdriver. Actually, I've got two of them here, but just a crayon that I've got, or a marker, anything you want to mark it with. You can even scratch, use a scriber or something. Once I find the adjuster, I should have had a look before I put this on. I think it might be on this end. Yeah. Alright. Hang on. Of course, my hammer is out of reach. I need to take this off for a sec. So, my adjuster is there, but I actually want to move it. Alright. So this one, the other side was down to tighten it up. So this one, it really should be up, shouldn't it? It should really be up to tighten it. Yep. Up to tighten. Alright. So you find there's my adjuster there. So what I do, so I usually just put a mark, but you can use these holes, you can see where that is, but I just put a mark at 12 o'clock. So this one should be up, so I'm adjusting it up until it's really tight and I can't turn it. That should be getting tighter. Getting there. Getting there. Not yet. Oh, still going. Alright, so that's tight. So what I do now is back it off a little bit. There you go. I might go. Yep, I'm gonna have to go. Oh, I've got it stuck now. I'm gonna have to go a bit more. Just a bit more. That's it. So now when I pull that handbrake on, she should be nice and locked up. What else can I show you? I did put all the brake lines back on yesterday. You can see there and in there. So I haven't bled the brakes yet. I'm not going to film any of that. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal. So, and like I said, there's two other videos, one to adjust the handbrake and one assembling the handbrake assembly. So like I said earlier in the video, if anyone knows how to put a clickable link, because I do everything on my phone, as I've said before, if anyone knows how to put a clickable link up, let me know. But I'll put a couple of links in the description to the other videos if you want to watch them, if you want to go back and watch them. But I reckon the only thing I'll show you where else I bug it up. The rear sway bar, I thought I could get it in like this, but I can't. So I'm going to have to undo the rear diff mount and drop the whole setup down a little bit. But that's pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to film that. And these things have gone on long enough, you know. So I'm just going to try this handbrake. Well, it feels pretty good. Yep. I don't know how locked up that is. I'm trying to turn it with my hands and I go, yeah, that's good. But the only other thing I have to do now is put the caliper back on, hook up the brake line, which I might do, I think. Let me see, I've got it here. So it's a 19mm, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned before this that this big, hang on, I can't see what you can see, this big socket is a 32mm socket for that nut on the back. I'm going to, when I've done all this, I'm going to go around the back there and really torque it up as hard as I can, but then there's a little locking thing that you put in there, so it should be fine. It can't really come out because you've got your axle in there. Sorry, that's another thing I've got to do, is I've got all the other side assembled, so I've only got one more axle to put in, but you know, that's, you've seen that before, so that's no big deal either. So I hope that somebody got something out of this, out of this Days of Our Lives series that I've filmed. Like I said earlier, you can just use part of it for the part that you're going to do. Not everyone's an idiot like me and wants to rebuild the whole back of the car, so I'm hoping that it is useful. Please let me know in the comments, and this will be the last bit of this, and then I'll just make a short video when I get it going. I'm just trying to line the caliper up. Sorry, there it is. This will be the last part in all of this. We'll move on to something else, so you probably get sick of this stuff. I know I am. And we'll move on, yeah. So I've only, like I said, there's 2 jobs left. 3, bleed the brakes, put the axle in on this side, and put the sway bar in, which none of it's too hard, so even a dope like me can handle that. Just look for my socket, I had it here yesterday, and I've probably left it around the other side. So anyway, brake line goes in there at the top. Screw the small one to it. I always do it while you can move it around before you put that clip back on, so just so they don't cross thread. Okay, so I've got that started. Wish I had my 19mm socket here. There it is. If only I had 19mm, there it is. Alright. if anyone's still watching, thank you for hanging around. Listen to me ramble. Oh, that didn't go well. I better do it this way. I know you're supposed to torque these things up to certain torque settings, and I know that inner nut should be torqued up, but I've had them, I've never had any trouble. Even your axles, you know, torque them up if you want to. I'll tell you a real bodge that I do, and it is bodgy, don't do it on your car, but when I put the axles in and put all the bolts in, I don't put Loctite on them, and you should, because main reason being I cannot leave this car alone, and I'm always pulling them out again, so I don't put Loctite on them. But like I said, you really should. Even that big nut for this spindle or axle or whatever you want to call it, it should be Loctited, but I haven't done it, especially on the other side, because I've got a horrible feeling that I've might have buggered that bearing. So it doesn't feel too bad, and it doesn't look bad. It looks okay when I put it in, but it's just, I've got this funny feeling I might have to change that again. So, and later on, if I'm worried about these nuts coming loose, I can just take the axles back out. You know, I've done it enough times. Really not looking forward to bleeding brakes, not my favourite, but I've got one of those air bleeders, so it shouldn't be too bad. I may have to hook up the scan or the scanner and do a ABS bleed on the scanner. But that's about it. I'm just going to tighten this up. Once again, I was doing it over the other side, so I'm not going to film any of this. I'll just show you. That's what I'm working on. There's a clip to go in there, so I'm just going to tighten this up, and this is done, that's done, and I'm going to put the axle in. But this is the finished result. Around the other side, there's me sway bar that I was talking about. There's not enough room to get it on, and there is the finished side. So axle back on, everything hooked up, ready to be bled. That's that mount I've got to undo. I've got to put the jack under the diff and just lower it down. So thank you for hanging around and watching these things. I'm going to end this one here. Please like, share and subscribe. I've noticed a lot of people watch the video, but not many people like it. I don't know why. I always do. If I watch someone's video, I always like it, but I don't really know why. I've never worked that one out, but I'm not going to get too worried about it. So yeah, please like, share and subscribe. Please make any comments you want. Always good to read the comments, and I will see you in the next one. See you later.